So the first quarterback we're going over here is going to be Matthew Stafford taking on that Commanders defense that ranks 32nd against opposing quarterbacks. Now, it's no secret that Matthew Stafford can throw up some fantasy games that are quite well here. So the thing is that with Matthew Stafford is you have to really play him while he's hot and then bench him when he's not. So right now, he's hot and he's going into your playoffs. You need to play the best quarterback that you can. Assuming that you don't have one of the top guys like a Hurts or a Mahomes or an Allen, etc., then Stafford is someone you can have confidence in this week against the Commanders team, who have allowed the 4th most passing yards and the most touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks. I almost like Matthew Stafford above people like, Mahomes or Allen. So he's in that kind of tier for me this week. We saw Cooper Kupp really become a reliable option once again, and that definitely bodes well for Stafford. So start Stafford with confidence this week. The next quarterback I'm going to go over here is Jordan Love taking on this Bucs defense that ranks 28th against opposing quarterbacks. While Jordan Love isn't really blowing you away with amazing numbers in fantasy football, he still has tons of potential, and this week he has a great matchup. The Bucs have allowed the 2nd most passing yards this season to opposing quarterbacks, and because this should be a pretty even type of matchup, I expect a lot of back and forth between Love and Mayfield. So Love is definitely in play for me this week. Now, the last quarterback I want to talk about here is Joe Flacco taking on that Bears defense that ranks 18th against opposing quarterbacks. Flacco has really been playing out of his mind since becoming the starting quarterback of the Browns. Last week he put 311 yards and 3 touchdowns up there. It just really came to a surprise of many people. I see no reason why Flacco's momentum should be slowing down against this Bears defense. He has proven that he belongs in the NFL, and if you have Flacco, chances are that the quarterback that you drafted at the beginning of the season is either hurt or just really sucks. So start Flacco with confidence. The first running back I'm going to talk about here is Bijan Robinson going on this Panthers defense that ranks 30th against opposing running backs. Bijan Robinson has been completely disappointing this season. He was drafted very high in almost all leagues to be really the cornerstone of their team. So don't get me wrong, we see games from Robinson which shows us why he was drafted so early to begin with, but the fact is that the Falcons really just aren't using him very well. So he just needs to be used in a different way. Fortunately for fantasy owners, Robinson gets to go against the Panthers defense this week, who can't seem to stop anything on the ground. So if you were going to make a stand and play Robinson with confidence at any time during the season, this would be your week. Last running back we're talking about here, or the next running back, that we're talking about here, is Rachaad White, going against that Packers defense that ranks 24th against opposing running backs. You want to talk about work? This guy is getting the work. In 5 of the last 6 games, White has had 15 or more carries, not including 4 of those last 5s. It was 20 or more carries. So this guy is not only getting the carries, but he's producing with those carries. The Bucs may not be a dominant team, but there is only one guy in this backfield even getting, fantasy relevant touches, and fantasy owners should really love that. Just in the last 4 weeks, White is averaging 86% of the snaps at this running back position. You pair that with the usage and the 24th ranked defense against opposing running backs, and you have yourself a nice running back for your fantasy team. Last quarterback we're talking about here is Ezekiel Elliott going against this Chiefs defense that ranks 14th against opposing running backs. Elliott took over really quite nice for the injured Ramondre Stevenson. So last week last week, Ezekiel Elliott saw 91% of the snaps at the running back position and ended with 22 carries. That type of workload is really amazing for fantasy football. The Chiefs have allowed almost 5 yards per carry this season to opposing running backs, and if you add that to his yards per carry average for the season, this should just be a nice outing for Ezekiel Elliott. First wide receiver we're talking about here is Zay Flowers taking on that Jaguars defense that ranks 27th against opposing wide receivers. I really do like Flowers this week. He gets a defense who's really allowed the 2nd most yards and the 4th most touchdowns to wide receivers since week 10. So even though he has been outshined by what Odell Beckham Jr. has really been doing, Flowers still needs the recognition here that he's been doing his thing pretty much all season long. So in a game with two good teams from AFC just really going at it, there should be plenty of fantasy points to go around for everyone. Flowers is definitely in play for me this week. Next wide receiver we're talking about here is Courtland Sutton, taking on that Lions defense, ranks 25th against opposing wide receivers. Sutton has had a touchdown in every game this season except for 3. It's almost expected now to have a touchdown at this point. He has what I would call an exceptional floor and should be started in all formats. The Lions have a good team this year, which could land the Broncos in a negative game script for most of this game. If the Broncos are really airing out the football, look for Sutton to have an ample amount of opportunities really to put up fantasy points for your team. Sutton is yet again a solid play. Last wide receiver we're talking about here is Marquise Brown, going against that 49ers defense that ranks 21st against opposing wide receivers. As of the recording of this video, Brown has not practiced yet, but having a bye week to really heal up, I fully expect Brown to be out there come Sunday. The Cardinals will be throwing the ball almost every possession this week just to attempt to keep pace with the red-hot 49ers team. Brown is the number 1 wide receiver for this team, and I fully expect him to be a fantasy relevant player this week. If you have a wide receiver 3 spot or just a flex spot open you need somebody to put in there, Brown is a good play this week. Let's go ahead and move over here to the tight end position. First guy we're talking about here is Isaiah Likely, going against this Jaguars defense that ranks 29th against opposing tight ends. Now that we've seen 2 games from Likely, we've kind of seen the tale of 2 ends here. His floor seems to be around 8 points and his ceiling looks to be around 20. So either way, looks like a solid play for the Jaguars defense, who really struggles against opposing tight ends. This could turn out to be a high scoring affair with the good teams from AFC, like I was mentioning earlier in the video. So Likely will have every chance to have more of a ceiling game than a floor game. Get Likely in your lineups. Next tight end we're talking about here is David Njoku, taking on that Bears defense that ranks 22nd against opposing tight ends. David Njoku is showing really his upside here. Under Flacco, we've started to see Njoku become a bigger asset and focal point in this offense. So with posting 27 fantasy points last week, it looks like Njoku is really finally starting to see that fantasy tight end kind of value that I was talking about all off season. So at this point, Njoku, in my opinion, is a must start just based on his upside alone. Last tight end we're talking about here is Tucker Kraft, going against that Bucs defense that ranks 28th against opposing tight ends. In my rookie videos after the draft earlier in the season, I told everyone that Kraft was a better receiving tight end than Musgrave. So now that he's really starting to show everyone what I was talking about, last week Kraft played 100% of the snap count at the tight end position and put up a career high 64 yards. He's going to look to build on that against this Bucs defense, who struggles quite a bit against the tight end position. If you're in need of a tight end, pick up Kraft and shoot your shot. Now on to the Bengal Tiger start of the week. The Bengal Tiger start of the week is wide receiver Jayden Reed. Reed ended up having 12 touches last week, so Reed is a big part of this offense and having a pretty good season, especially if you're in a PPR league. Reed is always a good source of fantasy points for a flex play and also has a good chance of finding the end zone each week as well. So going against a Bucs defense who ranks 29th against opposing wide receivers. So Reed is just an excellent play this week, and he may be flying over and under some of the radars, but not here at the Bayou Bengal Fantasy Network. Get Jayden Reed into your lineup, as he is easily the Bengal Tiger start of the week.